I got my ESA Rory in the summer of 2017. She was given to me completely by surprise and accident. I guess I didn't know about her. I didn't pick her out or anything. She kind of just was plopped into my lap. Kelly walks in the door. I'm like, oh, hey, Kelly, did you bring your kids? Because I'm friends with her children. And she's like, oh, I brought one of them. And her daughter, Sammy, walks in. I'm like, oh, hey, Sammy. And I see that she has a little bundle of fur. And I'm like, did you get a cat? And she's like, no. And I was like, oh, okay. And then she's like, do you want to hold her? I'm like, yeah. And she's like, do you want to keep her? And I'm like crying at this point. I'm like, yeah, I want to keep her. Apparently, a little bit before my appointment, my mom had gotten a call from Kelly being like, hey, we know someone who has a kitten. Do you want it? Do you want the cat? It's free, but do you want it? And my mom's like, okay. Because up until this point, she hadn't really decided whether or not I was going to be getting an ESA. Well, that made the decision for her. So Rory has helped me immensely, especially while I'm away at school. And she was very snuggly, and that was perfect for me because that's all I wanted, affection. And I wanted something that could snuggle me in my bed. She would like sleep in bed with me. She was something that was there. She would sleep on my chest, and that is essentially pressure therapy, which is really important for grounding. And she was something that I needed to take care of. It was a responsibility that I had, and that made sure that I would get out of bed to take care of her even if I didn't want to. Overall, she's been very helpful, except for when she like eats my homework, because that stresses me out, but I can get over that. So in order to bring an ESA onto campus, at least for Bloomsburg, the first thing you have to do is get a letter from your therapist stating that this is a working animal that is covered under the ADA and that your diagnoses are valid in the DSM-5. For those who don't know what those are, the ADA is the American Disabilities Act, and the DSM-5 is basically a giant medical manual that has just about every mental illness, every ailment that you could have in there. You have to get a letter from your therapist saying that they're legit. You can see a lot of websites that will try to do this, saying that they will get a letter from a psychologist or psychiatrist, that you don't actually have to see anyone, you just have to tell them, oh, I have this illness, and they'll write you a letter. Don't do it. It's better to get a letter from a therapist who you have been seeing and have maintained a relationship with for a couple years. At this point, I had been seeing my therapist Susan for like 3 years. So I already had a good relationship with her, and she knew that having this animal would help rather than be a problem. So you have to get that letter, and it has to be very specific. When I first went and gave my documents to the disabilities office at Bloomsburg, they actually told me that I had to get a different letter because my letter was missing one sentence. So after you get the letter from your therapist, you need to take your animal to the vet to make sure that they are up to date on all their vaccines, especially rabies, and you need to get a certificate of health, which is basically saying, hey, they're healthy and they're not a risk to the public. You take all of this, you go to the disabilities office, and you meet with Mark Turnbow, who is the head of Res Life. You have a meeting with him, and he basically has you sign a contract that tells you this is what you can and cannot do with your animal, this is what privileges you have because of your animal, and this is like basically what requirements that you have. So it's a very simple process. There's not a lot of hoops to jump through. So some advice I would have for anyone who's debating on getting an ESA, especially bringing them to college, is you have to be aware that you are going to be limited in some things that you can and cannot do. For example, I can't just like ditch my cat for a weekend and go home. I have to take her home with me. It's not my roommate's responsibility to watch her. Now, all of my roommates are great people, so they would if I needed them to, but it's not their responsibility to do so, and you can't expect them to. Fire drills are a pain. You are given the privilege, not right, but privilege, of getting a heads up on fire drills from whoever is in charge of your building, and sometimes you don't always get those heads up. If someone randomly decides to pull the fire drill, like they tend to do on college campuses. I remember one night, it was literally just a couple hours after a scheduled fire drill, like the fire drill was at 8, and someone pulled the alarm at like 2 o'clock in the morning. My eyes opened and then like the alarm started going off, and I apparently, in a smooth motion, just kind of leapt off the bed and was like, oh, where's she at? Because I knew I had to go get my cat. You cannot leave your animal in the building during a fire drill. I don't think it's legal to do in the first place, but it's just wrong and cruel to do it in general, because you have an animal that doesn't know what's going on. They don't know if you're going to be back. Be aware of those things. Like, you are going to have an extra responsibility. You're going to have litter, and you have to take care of that, and it's going to be a mess to clean up. I know cats like to scratch at things, they chew on stuff, and it's just going to make a mess. So you're going to be cleaning like multiple times a week. I sweep like every other day, and I have to lint roll my bed. So it's a lot of cleaning involved, but nothing that you wouldn't expect out of the ordinary. I think if you need one and you think it would help you perform better in school and not be a hindrance, absolutely do it. But I don't think, unless you're prepared for those, you know, the cleaning, the fire drills, the responsibility of having to take care of an animal while you're also in school kind of thing. So there's pros and cons to it, but it really just depends on what you need and what you think would help you. So here's a PSA about ESAs. Yes, they are technically working animals, but they are not given any special rights outside of housing and airlines. ESAs are not allowed into restaurants, they're not allowed into shopping malls or Walmarts. So if you have an ESA, or you are pretending that your pet is an ESA, and you take it into public, that's not okay. You can't do that. The only type of privilege they are given in regards to the law is housing and on airlines. It's very detrimental to people who have working animals. It gives ESAs a bad name, and we receive a lot of judgment for it. People are like, oh, ESAs aren't real, and I'm like, okay, but they are. And especially for people who have working animals like service dogs, it's a real problem for them. So don't be that person that takes their pet into Walmart calling it an ESA, because first of all, no, it's not okay. An ESA is not a pet, it is a working animal. They are there to provide a service to you. A pet can become an ESA, but you don't get your pet and be like, oh, I want to be able to take it into housing that I wouldn't usually be allowed to have pets in, so I'm gonna go online and get some like random super expensive certification that's not even like legit, and say that my animal is an ESA, and then I'm gonna get to do these things, because you're not. If you want an ESA, go through the right channels. It's not hard. Go to an actual therapist, get actually diagnosed, and go through the proper channels. ESAs are not pets, and they are not at the same level of prestige as like a service dog. You do not need to train them for anything. They should have a gentle temper and be relatively well behaved. They are a support animal, not a service animal.